Hello and welcome to this Education USA PDO orientation. Uh, for those who is your first time in this orientation, we would like to welcome you and to remind you, well, to present this information that it's going to be very helpful for you. You're muted and your video is turned off. We would like you to type your questions in the chat. Also, this session will be available on our YouTube channel as soon as we finish it and upload it. So if you miss it or you want to share it, you can do it a couple of days before, after this. So today we're going to present your student life in the United States. And today we're happy to have Vivian Lei, who is an international student from the University of Chicago. Currently, she's a rising junior who is majoring in sociology and English literature. And right now she's doing an internship with our Education USA Guadalajara Center. So thank you for being here, Vivian. Also, we have Rodrigo de los Santos, who is Education USA advisor in Yucatan. He was a student, a graduate student in Washington State. He studied anthropology. So we all three together are gonna share some experiences that we had as a student in the United States. So I'll remember you to please ask questions at the end of every single topic. You can type those questions in our chat. So feel free to do it and we're gonna answer those questions for you. So what is Education USA? Well, Education USA is a US Department State Network, and we promote US higher education. We advise potential international students and offer them accurate, comprehensive, and current information about universities that are accredited in the United States. And also we support US higher education institutions in their effort to recruit international students. Also, we are 430 centers all over the world. We are in more than 170 countries. And we encourage students to apply for these accredited institutions by following what we call the 5 steps process. And this 5-step process is more likely to find your options, to find sources to pay for these options, to apply for your university. And once that you are admitted to a university, follow the process to go and get a student visa. Finally, one of the 5 steps that we have is the pre-departure orientation that we have right now virtually, because we don't have the access to our centers, but we're gonna try to figure out things and try to do the best we can in these orientations. And I hope you like this orientation and get the most information you can from it. Okay, this is gonna be our agenda for today. We're gonna touch some important topics about academic student services, non-academic student services that universities provide. Also, we're gonna talk about housing, which is a big deal right now. And we're gonna give you some tips about money and expenses and how to do a budget in order to save some money. Also, we're gonna talk about making friends and dating, some leisure time and entertainment, and also transportation in the United States, because this is important because it changes from one country to another. So we consider that this is a very important topic. So after every single one of these topics, feel free and type your questions in the chat box and we're gonna answer them. All right, I'm gonna send some poll for you. And I would like you to answer these questions and see where, from which part of Mexico are you watching this webinar so far? So if you can help us out and answer these questions, it will be interesting for us to know where you guys are watching this presentation. Okay, I think a couple of seconds. will be good. And there are some of the results. We have a 90% from the northeast of Mexico. We have 4% from the north east. We have some people from Nayarit. We have some people from Puebla. We have the majority are from the center, which is Morelos, Estado de Mexico, Ciudad de Mexico. And well, we're going to continue with another question that we will have in here. We are interested in where are you guys going? Which part of the US are you headed? All right. I'll see a lot of people from the northeast of the US. We have some people from Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. Wow, it's pretty far from Mexico. We have some people from the southeast, some people from the Midwest, the Southwest, and the West. Wow, it's interesting to see people coming from all those places. And finally, we're gonna have the last poll for this part, but you're gonna have one last in this presentation, but let me share with you the last poll, which will be, yep. What level of studies are you pursuing today? So for your studies. Okay, we have some undergrad, which is a bachelor's in an engineering degree. We have also the graduate, which is a master's, PhD, or postdoctoral. And we have also the option for ESL, which is just going for doing an English course or like English as a second language course. So, okay, most of you go to the master's or to the graduate program. That's interesting. Okay, I will continue with the agenda. So one thing that the universities in the United States have is the academic student services. They're very different among all the universities, but we're trying to collect all those that are like pretty like particular and pretty like common among universities. So for example, we have tutoring. Universities offer tutoring services for some subjects. Some subjects like will be math, English as a second language, some engineering beginners classes, history. And those classes might be difficult for international students. So what universities do is set some students from sophomore and maybe seniors, juniors sometimes, that teach all those students in sophomore years these subjects. So they provide some tutoring, which is like a limited time. It could be like 1 hour, maybe half an hour, but you can go there as many times as you wish. And you can ask them all those questions that might be unclear in the class, because sometimes classes are like pretty big. In my experience, I went to classes that were like 300 students and were in auditoriums. So sometimes you miss something and you want to clarify those subjects or those questions, you can go to tutoring. Usually those tutorings are at the library, which is pretty common, but they could be anywhere in the campus. So if you are having trouble or we're struggling with some of the subjects, please ask if there's some tutoring after class. You can go there and clarify all these questions. Also, the schedule for the tutoring, it's Monday through Friday. Some universities now are doing this online, which is it's very in favor for us because we know the situation right now. So if you go online, you can go and tutoring and set an appointment and have your tutoring ready. Also, another academic student service that is very, very important for international students is the International Students Office. Sometimes it's called the International Students Office. It could be International Affairs. It changed names very across the country, but it's very important to you go there. It's your advising for international students on a scholar, on immigration, I-20, financial costs, cross-cultural issues, personal issues also. Sometimes they have counseling in there in the International Students Office. But also, I want to remind you that the I-20 and the DS 2019 information and procedures, it goes from there. So it's the main point, the main office in which you can ask questions. The information goes straight from them. So it's your point, your important point. Through your whole experience in the United States, this is the office that's gonna help you out. So also they do arrival orientations, which are pretty cool because they put you in a lot of groups with international students, not only your home country students, but you know a lot of people in those orientations, which is amazing because you know that you're not the only ones that are from elsewhere. So you see people from China, from, I don't know, Europe, from every single part of the world. And it's that the arrival orientation and where you can meet them, all of them. Also, they have international multicultural activities on campus. I remember in the university that I went, that it was like this big parade when we arrived, and all the cultures were represented in that parade. So you saw a lot of Mexicans there with all the costumes, and sometimes they were doing like Mexican food, and then you have the Arabic students doing another type of representation of their culture. So it's very interesting to see another type of cultures and food and music that you might not be exposure if you are right here in your home country. So it's very important to attend these multicultural activities. I mean, you're not forced to do it, but it's a good experience if you do it. Also, some of you are very concerned about getting a job inside the university. This office most of the time provides with the job openings for international students. So it's a good thing to have a contact in there. I mean, it's not going like every day and ask for a job, but I mean, go there and present yourself and maybe leave your contact there, a resume, and maybe you can get a call from the International Students Office saying you, well, this is the job that is opening on campus that you can apply as an international student, and that will help you to get a job also too inside the campus. Also, as international student, you have the right to go study abroad, which is pretty cool too. And this is the office you should go and contact them and ask them about the opportunities that they have for international students to go abroad, which is pretty cool. Another academic student service is the library, which is a very good resource for doing research, for also for leisure time, for going and get a book that you might want to read, but maybe you don't have the money, and you can find it in the library, and you can have it for a month. I think when I was studying, yeah, it was a month, and then you get the chance to renew it or go in and take it again. And also you can like finish it in 2 months, a really good book, which is the book loan services that are available in all universities. Currently, some of the services from the library, like book loan, are online. So you go and request them, and then you don't have to exposure because they leave you in a part, and then you can pick it up. And then they're making the adaptations for the current situation we're having right now. So if you are going there and you are not sure if you can go to a library physically and get a book, try to see the web page. They have like a lot of resources online. So that's a good thing that you are already paying for it on your tuition. So you just take advantage of it. Also, when I was studying in the United States, I got this big movie collection that was in the library. And I got a lot of those movies. There was like art movies and pretty cool movies. They also had like CDs, like gold CDs, like classical music CDs, like early rock, early jazz. And you can get them and have it not for a month, but I mean for a week or maybe 2 weeks, and it's cool because all those resources sometimes are not available for us right here, but you can go into a library and get those. Also, another important thing in the academic student services is the writing center. I remember spend a lot of time on the writing center when I was doing my undergrad. And it's a good resource because even though if you know a lot of English and you are pretty like native also, a native speaker level, you can go to the writing center and prepare your essays in a good way, because sometimes we're writing things and we think those are okay, but when you let that piece of paper to someone else, that person have another input, and maybe they can give you like a lot of feedback that you can use for improve your writing and on your papers also. Also, they help you out with essay organization, which is pretty cool, because sometimes you know the idea, but you don't know how to start an essay. And if you're gonna study in the United States, you're gonna get a lot of essays. Trust me, it's gonna be full of essays. It doesn't matter if you're studying engineering or on any other career that is not like related to that, you're gonna have like at least 2 essays for every class. So yeah, that's another great thing. Also, they'll help you with the genre and the audience analysis, because every single essay is different. So you have to be very aware about how to write and to whom you're writing those essays. So it's very interesting, the writing center. Most of the time is located on the library, but you can find it somewhere else in the campus. Also, writing and revision strategies and the formats that they use for cite some of the books, because there's plenty of forms to cite. So you might not know all of them. So it's good to go to them and ask them, how do I cite in an MLA or an APA or maybe a Chicago style? And they will help you out. It's why they are there for you. Also, they have like writing workshops, which is very interesting, because, for example, I was taking a class which is English literature, and I was assigned this paper which was writing in another perspective, and I didn't know how to do it. So I went to a writing center. They give me a workshop on how to do it. And it was not like a 2-hour workshop. It was like a week, which was cool because I got the knowledge for that. And I think that's a good thing for going there. Okay, another academic student service that it's very useful, it's counseling. And this is more like a personal counseling. You can go there and talk to the experts on the field, which is most of the time like a graduate person from that area, like psychology. Sometimes they do like a senior student who is almost graduating to help you out with some personal issues, maybe like if you're facing like cultural shock, you can go there and talk to them about how you feel about being away from home. And they can give you like a lot of great strategies to relieve that kind of stress from you. Also, they'll help you out with your career goals and your academic goals. Actually, when I was to counseling, they helped me out to figure out which career was better for me, because I wanted to study history, and I was pretty sure about it, and I was like going for it. But when I was in counseling, they told me, well, what do you want to study history? And I was like, well, pretty much to teach. And they were, well, you should study education and maybe with something focused in history. And in that way, you have like more chances to get a job, or maybe you have more chances to do different things. And that opened me a lot of a perspective about my career goals. So yeah, that's a good thing, the counseling, academic student services. And all these services are already included on your tuition. So you should take advantage of them, or maybe use them if you need them. Also, educational workshops, outreach program, and self-help resources, which is interesting. Then you have the career education services, which is career advising, but more orientated to see what classes you have left from your degree and see what are the better to take. Because sometimes if you wanted to take like a higher math class and then you have another English high class, they recommend you do not to take it at the same time, because you're gonna face like a lot of stress and a lot of work from both of those classes. So they advise you to take those classes that are gonna help you, and it's not like a lot of like a big charge on your career, on your classes too. Also, they have like crafting a resume, because most of the time we don't know how to craft a resume. So they help you out, they help you and guide you through that. Then they give you examples. So it's pretty cool and neat, this type of service. Also, the mock job interviews prepare you for a future job interview in the market. So they bring sometimes experts to, even though sometimes they bring like company recruiters. And I mean, they're not gonna hire you, but they're gonna give you an input or an insight of what it is on a job interview. Also, they have career fairs in which you go, let your resume, introduce yourself, and know some people from the area, know people from different companies. So it's a great way to start in your like job career. And currently, some of universities are offering these services online, which is it's interesting too. Okay, so besides all the academic student services they also have like recreational things, because not all your student life is gonna be like just studying. I mean, it's important to focus on studying, but also you have to need to relax a little bit and have some time for leisure. And in this case, the university provide good services for that. And I mean, recreational sports, you can have the opportunity to participate in a wide variety of sports. I remember that I was part of the soccer and I think it was a basketball, but I was not that good at basketball, so I decided to quit. But I mean, it was not that professional. It was just a couple of students playing like every week in a certain time. And we have the facilities from the university to participate in those sports. So it was cool because it was like not playing on the street. It was more like playing in a good setting, and it was interesting too. Also, they have outdoor adventure activities. Please ask for these outdoor adventure activities, because depending on the university you are going to go, it's depending those outdoor adventure activities. In my case, I was in a university that had these big mountains on the surroundings. So we were able to go hiking and sometimes they lend you an outdoor equipment. Sometimes they even do some outdoor trips, which was amazing. It was a great experience for me. Also, all the universities have these fitness programs that are most of the time given at the fitness center, which is like a big building or a big facility. When they have all this machinery, they have all these weights. They have sometimes they have like the pool, like Olympic pool, which is like a good experience too. Well, also you also this is included on your tuition, so don't be afraid to go and ask for using all these services. They have also professional matches and games, depending if your university is like a League One or League Two sport league. You can go to like a football games, basketball games, all college level, but you can go there and participate as an inspector and see everything in there and be part of the American culture, because it's really good to go and blend in and see what it is. And I don't know, well, we're going to have time for this at the end, but we're going to ask our colleagues to see if they went to one of these games, at least once at a time. Also, as a student, you receive discounts and most of the time free tickets for the games. Like if you go to the football game, you have to show your ID and they give you the ticket, or maybe 2 tickets per student. Back in the day, it was 2 tickets for students. So I don't know what is the rate today, but yeah. Also, if your university has like a good facility and has this special place for doing concerts. It's great because sometimes they bring like big artists to your campus, and you can go and see a couple of bands. I remember like a couple of years I heard that Metallica went to the university I went to. So it was pretty amazing. I was like, wow, in shock because it was a student. I will receive a discount, so that would be great. And also the tickets might be available through student services office. So you need to ask about those and be very like all these asking questions about when a band is coming and everything. All right, so I'm gonna give Vivian the floor to presenting of the housing on campus.
Great. So first, I'll introduce the on-campus student dorm housing, which is a really common form of housing for undergraduate students. So in my university, students are usually required to stay in on-campus dorms for the first 1 or 2 years of their college. While I was really lucky to have a single room for my freshman year, most people in my dorm will have to share their room with another person. So if you're more used to having your personal space, it could be quite challenging to have to share your room with another person. So I always feel it's really important to communicate your boundaries with your roommate and just make sure that you're respecting each other's needs. And if you're living a student dorm, chances are you will share the bathroom either with the entire floor or with your roommate specifically. In the dorm I stayed, I have to share the bathroom with the entire floor. However, I think most of the people I know do not have any issues with this arrangement, but it's definitely something you need to get used to at the start of college. My freshman year dorm had around 80 people. While some of them are just freshmen like me, many others are actually sophomores, juniors, seniors, and even some students from graduate schools. So talking to these people in your dorm would be a great way to know more about your college and also to start making friends. Each dorm is assigned with several residential assistants. They're usually called RAs, and these are the people who are students in the upper class who are like usually juniors or seniors, and they're responsible for arranging dorm activities and just making sure that everyone is having a great time at college. So if you ever run into any problems with your roommates or you have concerns that you'd like someone to address, I think they're usually the first persons you can reach out to. Due to the current situation, many schools have changed their housing policies, and a lot of things, such as group activities, usually organized by your dorms, these things might not be happening for the next academic year. So just to make sure that you check your university's website to follow the most up-to-date and proper steps to move in. Next slide, please. Next, I'm going to talk about how to potentially acquire off-campus housing as an upperclassman. Each school has different policies, but usually they would allow sophomores, juniors, or seniors to have their own apartments outside the campus. If you're involved with Greek life, you will probably live with the members from your fraternity or sorority. Depending on each organization, not all Greek organizations have their own housings, but many of the social Greek organizations would have their own housings. And there are usually different types of Greek life organizations represented on a college campus. And depending on the aim of that specific chapter, this organization could provide things like leadership prospects, volunteer opportunities, social events, or professional connections for its members. So I know a lot of people join frats or sororities just to have a good social experience in college. However, at my school, although there are several Greek organizations present on campus, I think none of them are recognized by the university. And students here always say that you don't necessarily need to join such an organization to meet friends or to just hang out with people. Fraternities and sororities will hold exclusive parties to their members, as well as more open parties where everyone on campus are welcome to join. However, at other schools where Greek life is more dominant, things can be really different. If you're interested in joining a Greek life organization, I will recommend you checking out the websites of your school's chapters to find more information. And in that way, you can understand what each organization specifically stands for, and you can also understand the ways you can get involved. Next slide, please. Next, I'm going to talking about renting your own place off campus. I think this option is usually available for juniors and seniors, and also a lot of graduate students I know from my school will usually live off campus in their own apartments. There are often apartments of different sizes around the college campus. Technically, you can live by yourself in a one-person studio, but I usually recommend living with at least one roommate because you might run into unexpected issues. And when you encounter problems like that, this is just to make sure that you have at least someone to talk to. I'm currently living in an apartment that is about 5 minutes walk from campus. And I think one really great advantage of having your own place is that you're able to cook your own meals. So although my dorm had a small kitchen, it was shared by around like 80 people in my dorm. And it was not that realistic for me to cook on a regular basis. And as an international student, I'm not too used to eating meals in the American style. So I felt much happier when I was able to cook the food I like in my own apartment. I know some apartments with good facilities are much more expensive than on-campus housings. However, there are other options that are about the same price or even cheaper. So at the end of the day, it's really up to you to decide what kind of places you would like to live for your college. Since we're still going through the current pandemic, I think living in your own apartment will provide you with more stability. Although my school offered international students or domestic students who can't return home during the last quarter, but I think students need to apply to get accommodated. At the same time, for some students, they have to move into a new dorm because there was only one dorm that was open on our campus. I think the dining hall was also open for most students, but it was for takeout meals only. And I stayed in my apartment during the last quarter, which I found really convenient because I simply avoided these troubles by having my own place.
Okay, money and expenses, a necessary evil or blessing, depends on how you look at it. So I could spend hours talking about my unfortunate experiences because I was such a bad administrator. The take-home message I want you guys to understand is that you have to plan. No matter how confident you are in your finances or how generous is your scholarship or student aid, you have to plan because you have to pay rent, you have to pay for your meals, and then that starts to add up, especially if you go out during the weekends, which most of you will likely do it. If you want to go to concerts, if you want to go to football games, whatever you do, you're gonna spend money. So be wise about it, plan everything. That's my introduction for you. I don't want to scare you, but I don't know, maybe most of you are gonna be living by yourself for the very first time in your lives. And I can tell you, when I was there, I was in grad school. I got a scholarship, a very generous scholarship. The issue is that I received payment every 3 months. And you can imagine that the first month I got this big check. And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm rich. I've never seen such amount of money in my entire life. So I started spending money like crazy. I bought all sorts of stupid things like video games. I invited my friends out. I pitched them rounds of, food and everything. So in the end, by November, I was broke basically. So I had to save a lot of money in terms of meals. I lost 10 kilograms, which is the equivalent of like 20 pounds. So learn from that, please, guys. Plan everything, count every penny. It can become an issue. So just bear in mind that finances are extremely important. They're as important as your academic life. So the first thing right off the bat that you will have to do when you get to the US is you're going to have to open a bank account, especially if you're a grad student or even undergrads that are under some sort of scholarship or assistance, because you're most likely going to get a direct deposit. So you have to set up your bank account. And in order for you to set your bank account, you're probably going to need some important documents. I don't want to give you any more details because it might vary according to each institution, each state, or each bank. So the main point of contact for you is going to be always the International Student Services or International Office. They can direct you of what's the better or most efficient way to open your bank account. But that's going to be one of the first steps that you're gonna have to do in order to pay tuition, receive your scholarship, receive your stipend, etc. Also important, I mean, it doesn't apply to most of you, I'm sure, because you're young. You probably know how to use online banking. So online banking is something that is taken for granted in the United States. When I first moved there, I remember that I still carried a lot of cash. I'm not gonna say that cash isn't useful. You always have to have some cash in your pockets, but I used to pay ridiculous amounts of money. When I was looking for a computer, I would pay with cash, and then the vendors will look at me like in a weird manner, So basically everything there is now online or with debit or credit cards. Also, if you ever acquire a credit card in the US, be very, very disciplined and learn about everything you can on the way interest rates operate, the minimum amount of money that you have to pay each month to not generate interest, all that. So credit cards can be a very good emergency valve, but in the end, you have to be extremely careful on how to use them. So when I went to the US, I opted not to use credit cards after that disastrous first semester. Maybe I could have gotten another one. It would have made my life easier, but in retrospect, it was fine with me not to use credit card because I start planning ahead of time in terms of rent, meals, tuition, all that. I mentioned before the importance of online banking versus cash payment versus checks and debit or credit card. So it's always useful to carry some cash in case of emergencies, but most of the transactions are made by plastic, as they call it. Again, make a budget, especially I would make a budget every semester, but if you can do for the entire year, that's way better. And you have to consider rent, utilities, plane tickets if you're gonna be traveling within the US, or if you plan to come back to Mexico in the summer or winter breaks. Also, if you have vacations, spring break, all that, you have to consider and put that into consideration. Also, textbooks are insanely expensive there. So make a budget for those. I could tell you that on average, it could go from $80 to probably $200, depends on the class, the level, the type of textbook that you're acquiring. If you also require any particular software, for example, if you're taking a particular lab, you will have to purchase software. Usually those, your institutions will have certain agreements with the software vendors, so maybe you can get discounts. Same thing with textbooks. I would recommend also, if you can have access to used textbooks, look into that. Depends on the type of textbook. If, for example, you're having a class where you have to show, especially on undergraduate levels, where you have to write on the textbook certain exercises, yeah, you cannot purchase used textbooks. But for other type of classes, if they're only literally textbooks, only text and lessons, you can probably find good deals on Amazon or on any of the stores within the university. Again, I recommend you to study your budget whenever you're gonna make an important purchase or you're gonna make a decision that involves money and expenses. Refer back to your budget. This is really important. Next, please. Vivian.
Next, I'm going to share some tips about making friends and dating in the United States, especially on a college or university campus. So I think as an international student, one thing that sometimes confuses me is the difference between casual friendliness and real friendships. So a lot of American students will treat you in a really friendly way, but sometimes it's purely out of politeness and not necessarily about you treating you as like the best friend, a best friend right after the first time you met. So a lot of American college students really like to hang out as a large group, and they will just get to know each other through the introductions of mutual friends. However, frankly speaking, up until this day, personally, I'm still not used to making friends in this way because I value deeper and closer interactions in friendships. So I'd say like a really good thing is that I've found many other students who have a similar way of establishing friendship, no matter they're domestic American students or international students from other countries. So I think a good way to really foster friendship in college is to just regularly check in with your friends through text messages or phone calls to see if they're doing fine with life. And from time to time, you can ask if they'd be willing to grab coffee or grab dinner or just hang out on the weekend. So I feel the essential way of making friends is pretty universal. After enough interactions, you will know if you vibe with a person. So if you're just about to start college, I will encourage you to look for social organizations, programs, and clubs within your university. So student clubs will be a really good way to spend time with the people who have similar interests with you. There are usually a number of music, theater, dance, sports, or religious clubs on college campuses. And if you have interest in any of these activities, chances are you're going to meet likely-minded people in these organizations. And for international students, I think getting involved with culture or ethnic clubs, for example, if you're involved with a Latino center club, you'll really bond with people who share similar cultural backgrounds with you. And sometimes I think that can be really valuable for international students who are away from home and who are not in touch with the culture they're from on a daily basis. And in conclusion, there are a lot of different ways to get to know different people on your campus. For example, you can join a study group, you can attend a special lecture, you can attend a special event, or you can join a club or program. So I would really encourage everyone to check out any events that might interest you at the beginning of your first year. And personally, I found Facebook to be a really good platform to receive event information around campus. So I think a lot of student organizations will usually make Facebook pages for their upcoming events. And just feel free to check out the ones you're interested in.
Okay, I think we're gonna have another poll for this, which is one last question for you. Please, this is very important information for us. So help us out voting about what is your biggest concern at the time of making new friends in the US? Not having enough time, fitting in, cultural differences, language barriers. Okay, we have some options in here. So Vivian, what was your first biggest concern when you were preparing for going to the US and going there? What was your biggest concern about making new friends?
I think fitting in was probably one of my biggest concern because at least like before coming to the United States, I have a lot of impressions of the really stereotypical American college students that I just like assume that like they all like to like hang out in a large group and they all like to like socialize by going to parties and doing things like that. But like I think after actually attending college here, things I feel like there are like so many different people that it's really hard to generalize to say like what American college students are like. So I will say that like sometimes like it feels really scary to just like step out of your comfort zone and to just get in touch with people from a totally different culture background. But I actually found that really rewarding because in that process, I feel like I've made some really, really good friends from different cultures. And I think sharing about like our cultural differences is really, it's been a really interesting and enriching experience for me.
Well, I think a lot of students share your feeling about fitting in. Well, that's it's according to this poll that we launched. What about you, Rodrigo? What was your biggest concern about making new friends in the United States?
I've always been interested in cultural differences, and my suggestion to all of you is don't be afraid to interact with people, no matter how different they look or how different their culture of origin might seem to be uh, at you at the first time, because that's part of the important experience of being part of a university, to try to understand other worldviews. I try to make as many contacts as possible, especially those who I believe were completely from out of my um, cultural understanding. Let's say that I would try to engage with people from countries such as, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, Oman, which I had very, very limited knowledge about it, Russia, Germany, and that was very fulfilling. And I learned soon enough that all the fears that I had, all the awkwardness that I had in terms of making new friends or making new contacts, we all share that. In the end, we're in a different country, we're living by ourselves, trying to make the best out of the experience. Also, going back to what Vivian mentioned about not generalizing in the US, that's completely true. I always say to people that ask me about, oh, so what's the US culture like? Well, in the United States, there are many, many cultures. You can compare, for example, I see that a lot of you are going to the Northeast region of the US. You're gonna find in general, again, that Americans from the Northeast have very similar traditions to other people, but also you can note important differences. For example, I went to Washington State University, which is in the West Coast, and people there seem to be more friendly. When you buy stuff at the supermarket, they will ask you, oh, so what plans do you have for the weekend? You know, like small talk. When you go to New York City, for example, or Maine or Connecticut, which is part of New England, the Northeast region of the US, if you go to a vendor, or if you go to a supermarket, and if you ask them how is it going, they will look at you like, whoa, what are you doing, man? Just purchase this and go out. So that was one important shock, because before going to Washington State, I had previous experience visiting friends in New York, in Maine, in Connecticut, in that region. Same thing can be applied. You can probably tell us a little bit about your experience in Texas, Hector, because it is my understanding that also they have different
Yeah, they're
traditions.
different. And they're like some parts of Texas are like very friendly, very welcoming. They're like a pretty open to the Mexican culture and other cultures too. But there are some parts that they're not like that open. They're like more narrow to that. But I mean, it's like everywhere. I don't know if you want to continue, but another of the options in here you get a lot of responses, but was not enough time, which is a big concern. You might be concerned about it, like I'm going to the United States just to study, but I mean, you can make friends also by studying. You can make like study groups. You can go to the library, meet someone there. I mean, it's not necessary like I'm gonna leave everything behind and then make new friends. I mean, you can find ways to do new friends in the United States. So you're gonna have time for all those. Thank you for your response. We're gonna continue with the presentation, all right? So there you go.
So next, I'm going to talk about dating in the United States, especially on a college campus and also as undergrad or graduate students. I think the dating or friendship culture in the States is really different from where I come from. So here you can go to movies, grab dinner, or visit another person's room as a friend. And I think other people wouldn't necessarily assume that like you're dating each other or you're in a committed relationship with each other. So I think relationships between genders are fairly informal, and I have friends who identify as different genders across the gender spectrum. However, if you want to be more than friends with a person, you could just simply ask that person to see if they're interested in going on dates. And going on dates doesn't mean that you're in a committed relationship with that person. But I think it suggests that like both parties involved are interested in exploring more, exploring more about that potential. So in the American dating culture, people will just go on at least like several dates before they talk about being in a relationship. And what I found really interesting, and also I think it's a good principle, is that both parties are free to drop out in this process if they feel like they don't click. So if you get rejected or if you want to reject someone, just don't feel bad about yourself or the other person because it's really normal and it's college or it's university. It just happens all the time. And I think people meet their dates in all kinds of ways, but on American campuses, it's pretty common to use dating apps such as Tinder, Bumble, or Grindr to meet potential dates or like even romantic partners. And one thing I'd like to emphasize is that dating does not imply consent to any sexual activities. So it's really crucial to ask the other person about their feelings and acquire their consent before engaging in any sexual activities. And I think that also applies to any sexual activities in relationships. So I think being really open about your needs while respecting the other person's choices, this can just eliminate a lot of misunderstandings and prevent potential harms. And charges of sexual harassment and sexual assault are really serious on American campuses. And the consequences can range from being expelled from your school or like facing criminal prosecutions. And although I don't want this to happen to anyone, but if you feel like there's any incident that really concerns you, I think a really good way to approach it is to contact the Title IX office at your school. So the Title IX office will usually provide anonymous resources, and you don't need to disclose any identifying personal information if you're using resources like that. And they can always like provide you with additional resources, such as information about the filing a report or pursuing the disciplinary process if you think that's like something you want to choose. And otherwise, I think they can always provide you with additional resources, such as student psychological counseling. And what I found really cool is that they could even reach out to your professors to help to just ask for extensions on your assignments if you think the incident impacts your academic performance. So I will really encourage everyone to check out the website of your school's Title IX office. And this is to make sure that you know your rights as a student.
If I can add a little bit on that one, this is going to be particularly important for those of you that are going to be teaching assistants, because you're most likely going to take an online course on sexual harassment, and there you can learn the particular protocols that your institution follows regarding this sensitive topic. So I encourage you to look at those. They're going to be mandatory in any case, so you'll have to take them. But if not, just go to your International Student Service Department or to your particular department, and they can give you further information regarding the protocol, the guidelines when you are, for example, when you are teaching, the relationship between teaching teacher and student, it is extremely important to note that there is like an inequality of the relations of power, let's say that. So you're always going to be on a position of power, and you have to be extremely careful of the language you use and the treatment you give to your class, etc. So you'll learn about that in your institution, hopefully.
Well, there you go. We were talking about a lot of activities and a lot of services that universities provide, but also we would like to emphasize that there's a lot of popular activities. There are leisure time in the United States, which is most likely like free time, what to do on your free time. And for example, listen to music is very popular. As I was saying before, in my university, a lot of bands were playing in the campus. So it was a great activity to go and listen to a lot of good bands or a lot of like popular acts too, a lot of popular musicians were there. So it was I mean, it was not a big city in the United States, but the artists get there. So it was awesome to go in there. Also, dining out, it's a good experience because in the United States you can find a lot of different cuisines. You can go and try Thai food. You can go and try Chinese food, like real authentic Chinese food, Italian ones. Don't try Mexican. I'm just kidding. But there's a lot of good food in the United States. I don't know if you want to add a little bit about this, Rodrigo and Vivian. What were your leisure time activities in the United States when you were there?
Well, every single day something's happening on campus, so you have many options. In my case, I really love to go to the rec center, which was a gym, and we also had like pickup soccer games all the time. So just take a look at your it has different names: recreation center, student center, whatever. But in essence, these almost all universities have this like facilities that you can use for free because it's included in the tuition. This is really important. So everything is free. They can have swimming pools. They can even have jacuzzis. They have a soccer indoor courts. They have fields. They have basketball. Everything you can imagine. Also, they have like gym equipment. So I really like to be there. Also, there are many clubs of any sport that you can imagine. I was in the fencing club because I really like martial arts, and I spent a lot of time there, probably more than I should have that first semester, given my classes. But I mean, it was really fun. So as long as you can manage your time, even as a grad student, because I know that grad students in your houses, they might be like, nah, this guy has no idea because we'll have no time. You can have time. And I would say that it's necessary because there's so much you can do in terms of studying. There's mental exhaustion, especially if you're working on a lab from 9 to 5 and then you're taking classes. There are ways that you need to think about in order to relax. Another important, I just think about this. Another crucial aspect that I recommend you is make your apartment or your house feel like home. That's going to be really important. Make it like your temple where you can retreat when chaos is occurring in your department, chaos is occurring elsewhere. Just have a safe place where you can feel at home, where you can feel cozy. If it's cold outside, you know, you just make it. I remember I decorated my apartment with crazy posters. I always had music on. I made it feel like my place because, I mean, I was born in Merida and Washington State was like thousands of miles away, and that was the very first time I was so far from my home. And the very first week were kind of tough, but then I realized, okay, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna make the best out of this, and this is gonna be my home. So that I would recommend you to make yourself feel at home.
Okay, another important point is to check the local newspapers and websites for events like movies, live concerts. Also, sometimes they do ads about bars and nightclubs, museums, go to see a sport. And as Rodrigo was saying, there's a bunch of clubs inside campus, but also if there is not in there, you can form your own club and go into the university and say, well, I'm interested in this. and I would like to form a club with all these students, like another 5 students, and you can form a club, and the university provided with some resources for it. So that's interesting too. Also, if you are invited to a party, it's a very common thing to bring a small gift or a token in a way to appreciation. So please be mindful when you're invited to a party and bring something. It could be a small thing, you know, it has to be like that big, but yeah, it's like a very common American practice.
Yeah, also, I don't know if you've heard the word potluck, but keep it in your mind because you're going to hear that word a lot. Potluck is basically a party where you bring, well, in Mexico, we call those de traje. So basically, you take your own meal. I mean, you usually cook meal from your country. I used to cook. The only thing I knew how to cook. Well, that's not literally. Technically, it's not cooking. I made my famous guacamole, and that's the thing I would bring to any parties. And like, oh my God, Rodrigo, this is great. So that's a potluck basically, and you're probably gonna engage in a lot of those in your department with your friends, etc.
Okay.
Oh,
And
so okay, this one. So everything we've talked about so far, we have to make the big disclaimer because as you know, we are in our current historical situation where a lot of things have been changing and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone for the fall semester. So just keep track of the news because many of the services that we just mentioned might have changed in your university depending on the state you are. Some states right now are relaxing some of the rules. Some others are going back to lockdown. So just bear in mind that this might change quite a lot, at least for the rest of the year. Hopefully, you'll have the opportunity by next year, if you're leaving this year, to live the fully university experience. I hope, I mean, ancient guys always say that hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right? So we can only hope for the best. But I'm pretty sure that a year from now, we'll probably be more relaxed in terms of the services and the students' life, etc. So that's a big disclaimer. Everything we talk in this presentation has to be adjusted to what's happening right now worldwide. So also that applies not only to the university, but if you want to do outdoor activities, if you want to go to bars, to casinos, whatever you're into, that might change. Movie theaters, it's a big one. We don't know when they're reopening. So yeah, just keep in mind those issues.
Okay, so in terms of local transportation, there's a lot of ways to transport in the United States. Here we have the most common and the most popular, but a good way to save some money, as Rodrigo was saying, it's like riding a bicycle, sometimes or maybe riding the public transportation. There's a lot of, depending on your city, but sometimes you have subways, bicycles, buses, taxis that could be like more expensive. And also most of the places in the United States have like platforms like Uber, like Cabify, Lyft, a lot of them. So be mindful at the time of transporting yourselves because it's a big expense in the United States. Also, there's like long distance transportation. So some of you are gonna go back to Mexico when vacation is available or holidays. So there's a lot of ways to go and transport it long distance, like airplanes, trains, buses, cars also, which will be the most expensive thing because you have to be in like having in shape and having like in order all your papers, like your insurance, your license and everything. So cars will be like the most expensive way to transport for a long distance. So also look for discount fares because sometimes as a student, you have this benefit to have like airplane tickets or train tickets or bus tickets cheaper than the rest of the population. So look for those on the websites, on the local agencies. And finally, we would like to set this part for a couple of questions from the audience. Remember to type those on the chat and they're gonna be read by some of the Education USA advisors.
Okay, guys, I have some questions here. First question is, I'm going to the University of Chicago. Vivian, can you recommend some places to start looking for apartments?
Great. So I think if you're a graduate student who's studying in the University of Chicago, I think a lot of graduate students, they will live on the 55th Street, around like 55th, which is like, I guess like the north of campus. And I think for like our school, so it's basically like 55th is the start of campus, or like it's like the north side of campus. And on 53rd, there are some like restaurants or like Target or like CVS, a lot of like local shops like that. So a lot of people would choose to like, I guess I live on the 53rd as well. So I would just like recommend like looking for places like around those areas. And so University of Chicago is like also close to Lake Michigan. And I also know graduate students who are like living in those areas, but just like be mindful that you might have to like use public transportation on a daily basis if you're living like further away from campus. And for me personally, I would just like prefer like walking to campus. But if you don't mind like taking public transportations, I think it's totally up to you. And I think no matter what, just like make sure like you check your apartment and like check like the reviews of your renting agency before making a decision. This way you can just like make sure that you're getting the best option possible.
The next question is it recommended to have a car in cities like Chicago?
So I think in Chicago, it's really hard to park, especially if your school is like in the downtown area. But I'm really not so sure about this problem because personally, I don't have a driver's license. And I also know people who actually own cars here, but I'm not sure like how they manage the parking issue.
Usually the university will issue, you can purchase parking permits within the campus, but I mean, I didn't do it. I mostly travel by bicycle, but also my campus was in a small town. So it depends, you have to look into that.
No, I can tell you that you need a parking permit, which is another expense you have to consider at the time. If you're having a car, you also have to consideration that.
Yeah, and most of the times they're overpriced, so
Right.
it's up to you.
The next question is about housing. Is there any website to know more about the option families in college?
I can share many stories about how I moved there without having a place already, but that's a very bad advice. What happens usually, you can look, the best way to go is to contact students. They might give you hints and tips of where to look at. Sometimes, especially for grad students, if you're trying to get housing outside of campus, personally, I haven't find the websites of the universities extremely useful. So most people would go to Craigslist, but also you have to be very aware of scams because there are a lot of fake accounts there, like the famous meme of the Nigerian prince that ask you for your bank account. There are a lot of those on Craigslist. So don't give any personal information on Craigslist. Yeah, my best suggestion is to contact students and they can give you, or your advisor, they can probably refer to some sources, reliable sources.
Some university has like a housing office, so you can contact them too.
Okay, the next question is, do all the banks in the US have transfer fees, or are there some banks like in Mexico where they are free in most cases?
Like transfer locally or international transfer? Because it might vary. But again, it depends on the state, on the bank, on the type of transaction you're talking to. So I would assume that most banks, if you're talking about international transfers, they will charge some amount of money, but they usually don't if you're making transactions within the country. But yeah, look into that. Depends on the state and the bank.
They were asking about national transfers.
Oh yeah, they shouldn't charge, or if they charge, probably would be like $3-4, from what I remember, at least in Washington State.
One thing is that if you don't have money on your account and you try to use your card, they charge you a withdrawal fee, which is
Yeah,
like
the
30
over,
30
what's
bucks.
that called? The over what? Over something.
Or yeah.
Over something, yeah. Don't do that. Just make
So-
sure whenever you purchase, make sure that you have a balance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good thing.
The next question is, when being a grad student and receiving a stipend as part of an assistantship scholarship, is it necessary to open a bank account in the USA? I cannot use a Mexican one.
No, it is necessary. In most cases, it is necessary to open a bank account because you're going to receive your stipend by direct deposit. And then that direct deposit, as we talked in the previous webinar, it's subject to taxes. So you have to declare your own taxes, and that's why you need a US bank account.
The next question is about transportation. Is there any city or region in the US that you can that you consider isn't safe to cycle?
No, most of the cities are like bike friendly, but you have to be careful. You have to wear your helmet and all the equipment that you need to ride a bicycle. But yeah, most of the cities are made for riding on bicycles.
Yeah, you have to be extremely careful. It's not the same to ride a bike on New York City than to drive a bike on, I don't know, like Pullman, Washington. It was a small
El Paso,
town.
Texas.
Or El Paso, Texas. Yeah. So yeah, bear in mind that. Usually, in my experience, drivers are very aware of cyclists or bikes. But I mean, of course, accidents happen. So always wear your helmet. I had a really bad bike. I'm not gonna talk about my experience, but yeah, those are bad examples. But I had well, not serious, but I had an incident involving me riding a bike downhill.
Any other questions?
No, the last question that I have, you already answered. It's how safe is it to ride a bike?
Okay. Well, in that case, we
Can
would
I-
like you.
Wait.
Sure.
I'm sorry. There's
Okay.
one more.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I was gonna add
They,
something. But
they
go
just
ahead.
finished writing it. Once I finish my program, what is the procedure to follow up on my bank account? Should I close it? Because as you said, I will have to do my taxes. So what should I do when moving back to Mexico?
Good question. I didn't close my account, by the way, but there's only like $10, I'm pretty sure. So I check with your bank and your institution. I'm not sure. I might actually check. That's a good question. I didn't think about it. Yeah, I mean, if it's $10, I would say if it's not a significant amount, you shouldn't be worried too much, but just make sure to check with your institution and your international advisor. I was gonna mention about the bike and transportation stuff. Another advice I will give to all of you is to do some research before you move in about the region, the city, the topography, which means like, for example, when I moved to Pullman, I was born and raised in Merida, and Merida is really flat. And then when I moved there, campus was on a hill, on top of a hill that was on top of a hill that was on top of a hill. So especially if you're planning on getting a bicycle, you have to develop some sort of stamina. So that's an example. Another example is to research about climate and weather, because maybe for you it won't be doable to use your bike during the winter, especially if you live in the Midwest or northern regions. So yeah, do some research, and that's the best way to decide how to proceed.
And
Sorry.
Sorry, I would like to add one more thing on the bank account issue. So for me, I have a Citibank checking account, and I think each month you have to like actually make an active transfer to just like avoid extra charges, which is usually $10. And a simple way of doing that is to just basically like charge your phone every month with your bank account. Because like I think in the middle of like last quarter, I just switched my bank account and used a different account to charge my phone, and I got additional charges for like my checking account. So just to, I guess like just to be aware of this potential issue, and always like reach out and ask questions if you're not sure about like how a bank will just like deal with your account.
Those are all the questions. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Oh yeah, we're gonna invite you to our next session. It will be July 14th at 5 p.m. Central Time. It's gonna be about academic culture and values in the United States, what to expect in your new learning environment, and also some resources for online learning. There's a link for registering, and thank you for being here. I think there's some more information that you are gonna give. Yes.
Okay, there's only one thing we'd like to tell you, that we were scheduled, it was scheduled, the student visa application process session for July the 21st. And there is a change. It's going to be on July the 30th. Please save the date for this session so that it's going to be next July 30th at 5 p.m. Thank you.
There's our contact information of Education USA Mexico, which is our email, our Facebook, or Twitter, Instagram account, and we have a page, and we can visit there and find a lot of resources for you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian.
Gracias. Thank you, Vivian. Gracias.